smash the like button, and subscribe.
Cool.
I think that all of those things are goals from this. But like in general, why do you support Trump?
I have five main points. There's a sixth point, but I don't necessarily agree with it totally. The first point would be economic strength, affordability. I think that Trump is, generally speaking, a successful businessman. I mean, when I was working in commodities as a young man, I found that he was excellent in the ideas he was bringing to the table in his book, The Art of the Deal. I read through that. I found it very insightful, especially in his second term. I mean, he's made a lot of changes regarding that suit his policies. Secondly, I would say immigration, border security, general domestic policy. The third reason would be national security and foreign policy. And then fourth would be like, how would I say this, like fighting the deep state or like government reform would be one. And then probably like cultural and social issues. I tend to have an agreement with him, but when it comes to cultural and social issues, I lean more toward my bias with like a Christian moral framework involved. So it's kind of hard to say that, any president or any one person perfectly encapsulates my worldview regarding cultural and social issues, or really any of these issues that we're talking about. But those would be my five main points. And then sixth, I think that he has a fun, like, feng shui style, and I like his general resilience to the various assassination attempts that have been on his life. And then also, like, the fact that he just can't be beat. So, those are my reasons why I support him. What would you like to start off with?
Okay. I think that we could start off with the fighting the deep state. I think that
Yeah,
everything that
sure.
you would consider to be the deep state would actually be things that Donald Trump perpetuates to a greater extent. And I'm actually like
Okay.
quite curious what you even consider the deep state to be in the very first place.
I'm more so referencing like this stagnant, perpetuated bureaucracy that we've kind of established, I'd say since like maybe 1890s, like and more so in the 1950s, but something that's just politically biased that sways regarding whoever is in political power at the time. I just feel like we have a general bloat in the federal system, and that bleeds itself through to the state systems on a larger scale.
So
And
so even
and through that
individuals.
bloat, we've essentially created like deep-seated roots that don't necessarily remove themselves as easily as, say, like something that's changed in an election.
Okay. I'm trying to. Is it just like the people who are nonpartisan independents in the government? Is that the deep state?
Sure, you could argue that like elite institutions like media, tech companies, federal agencies, uh, elected and non-elected like civilian leaders. But I mean, this it doesn't not always have to pertain to that. It could be like
So how is he
particular
fighting the deep
civilians.
state?
I'm sorry?
How is he fighting the deep state?
Well, I feel like he's doing a lot to um, identify, especially with like working hand in hand with the DOJ and the FBI and getting like these agencies to identify with the help of um, independent journalists to identify and independent like agencies as well, not just journalists, but like independent agencies, military functions. He's generally like a bridge builder toward navigating what is the deep state, where are these seeds, and how do we dismantle them and break them and bring
Yeah,
them into the light
yeah.
so that we
He's
can figure out how
navigating,
to.
addressing, and fighting the deep state. How is he fighting the deep
I
state?
mean, I don't have a specific answer to that. It's such a vague question, but it's a
Okay, I'm
specific
sorry.
question. I don't
Let me
I
just
don't have
clarify.
specific examples to show you.
Let me clarify. If it's a vague question, well, then what you said originally was vague. When you said that Trump
Okay,
was fighting the deep
fair.
state, that was
I'll give you
vague
that.
because if I ask you, what does it mean to fight the deep state, and you think that's a vague question, well, then that means that what you said was vague.
Yeah, okay. I you know what? I'll concede that. Yeah. So, I mean, what do you feel that Joe Biden or that any other president has done to fight and I'm not trying to like pivot or how would, well, whatever way you would else say that. But I'm just curious, like, how would you define that? Because I don't necessarily have perfect examples or like a method of saying that he uses to fight it. I would say that his work with Doge does well with that. I would say that his work with independent journalists does that. I would also say that his work with certain elected individuals does that. So, like specific examples, I'm not quite certain what you want more than that.
Doge is done, found nothing. They spent more on doing Doge than going against it.
Well, how do you
If
say that Doge found nothing?
they didn't find anything that was more than what they spent. They thought they were going to
Yeah,
find
more than what they
like
spent.
hundreds
Like,
of billions of dollars of fraud every year. No, they didn't.
okay, do you have anything that backs up that claim?
Yeah, they didn't establish that they found like that certain fraud with the itemized receipts. I think the max that they established was less than the amount they spent on the program, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so you're saying that Doge was ended because it was just inefficient?
Yeah, if it spends more on its own
I
duties than it
understand what
actually finds in
inefficiency is,
fraud,
but you're
that's
saying yes to
inefficient.
that. Okay, valid. I mean, I don't necessarily have the numbers in front of me. To the best of my knowledge, from what I understood of how this program was working, I was under the impression that it was significantly more efficient than it was wasteful.
No,
So this is new information to me and new knowledge to me. I
I
would love to know
support
what your source is on
reducing
this.
fraud, though, of course. That's from Doge themselves, based upon their own itemized receipts, because they had to go back on everything they claimed originally in terms of how much it was in the estimates that they provided.
Oh,
So that's directly
so
from
do you
Doge.
not think that the new fraud division is a good thing?
Well, I think it's good to go after fraud and try to look for fraud. I don't dispute you there.
Oh,
I'm
okay. So
confused
do you
why they didn't
support
look
Nick
into the
Shirley?
DoD at all.
Well, do you support Nick Shirley if you think it's good to go after fraud?
No, I do not support Nick Shirley.
But you think it's good to go after fraud, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's what he's doing. I think
Oh, what do
he's
you think
trying.
he's
I think
doing?
he's creating a propaganda campaign. I don't think he's actually going after fraud
What makes you think that he's creating a propaganda campaign instead of going specifically after fraud?
because he decides to go to Democratic areas, even though they have lower rates of fraud comparative to Republican areas such as Florida.
Who cares if they have a political bias or whether or not they
What,
have
if having a political
X,
bias
Y,
isn't
or Z
important.
political bias? But he
It
just
does
chooses to
matter.
go
Wait,
to
wait.
any
If I was
area.
doing videos of fraud and I was only looking after Republican fraud, not looking at any Democratic fraud in any Democratic or blue state, only red states, you guys would get mad at that because you'd say it's politically
We would
biased.
tell
It's
you that. No, we would
propaganda.
appreciate the fact that like Republicans are being held accountable.
No, you
And
guys
when you say
wouldn't.
you guys, you're immediately lumping me into being a Republican. I mean, I support Trump, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm a Republican.
Okay, but like, let me just clarify. Republicans in general would make this claim about me.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I don't necessarily think that you're exposing fraud.
Okay, I know I'm not. I said if I did, and I was doing it
If you
specifically
were
just for
going to
Republican areas, they would
particular,
call me
okay, yeah,
politically
I see what you're
biased,
saying. Yeah, that's,
right? And they
I'll
would
grant
say that
that.
I'm a
That's fair.
propagandist
I'll
because I'm
grant
just
that.
trying to
That's
make
fair.
Republicans look bad without even doing the same sort of
Sure.
criticisms of the
The only
Democrats.
reason why I'll grant that is because I think that politically speaking, people always have a tendency bias towards like whomever is in the limelight under the umbrella, quote unquote, like figuratively, so to speak. Um,
Okay,
so that
well,
makes sense, right? And that's why, like an independent like Charlie Kirk, for example, it generally gets lumped in with the Republican right wing position.
he wasn't
But
independent.
he
He was
was one of the most
definitely.
moderate individuals, like from our time,
No, I disagree with you. I very much disagree with that. He was not independent. He was firmly right. If anything, he was to the right of the Republican Party,
as it is now or as it was then.
as it was both now and then.
Interesting. I highly disagree with you. I think that the Republican Party now is, especially considering the youth of
Well,
today,
maybe
is
you. How about in
far
certain
more
ways?
right leaning than it was back then.
Well, I still think he's further to the right of like the general movement, especially
As
on
they are
things like
today.
abortion.
Well, yeah, Charlie Kirk was very anti-abortion. I know that. Do you support abortion?
Yeah, I definitely support legal access to abortion.
Okay, interesting. Well, you
I
still haven't like answered my question as to whether or not you support like draining the swamp and government reform, as to whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, as to whether or not we should be doing. I mean, this is one of the primary reasons why I support Trump. You just said like, what is this and why do you support him? And then like you haven't given me enough of a reason to shift my position saying
Yeah, we
like,
haven't gotten to that in the conversation yet. We're still
yeah,
having
so
this
what
conversation.
other
We're still going through your views. You know,
what
right? Like
other
I'm still
points
clarifying.
about the deep state do you think
Can I finish?
like
So like
go ahead.
let me just address that. So
Hmm.
I do think it's important to go after fraud. I do think it's important to go after like these sort of things, but what you're not understanding is that Trump isn't actually draining the swamp. Trump is the swamp himself. Okay, he's made billions off the presidency. Your whole issue with the swamp in the first place is perpetuated by Trump to the greatest extent possible. Tell me everything that you dislike about the swamp, and then I'll show you how Trump does it to the greatest extent possible.
I mean, that's a huge claim. I think that
Try it.
like it would depend on what you and I both unanimously define as the swamp. So, what
Okay,
would
yeah.
you
So
define as the
so
swamp?
just tell me what you think the swamp is, and I'll
Well,
tell
no,
you
no,
how
no.
Trump
Let's
exemplifies
make a
those
mutual thing,
characteristics
man.
to the greatest
Let's
extent possible.
give and take. What do you think is the swamp?
We're not giving taking. I'm asking you a question, and you're responding to it right now. Okay?
Okay,
You're not going to shift the burden to me. I'm asking you a question. If you want to ask me a question after, you can, but you're going to respond to my question first.
okay. Would you repeat your question?
You don't remember it?
Your position, if I remember correctly, was that you want me to clarify what the swamp is.
Yeah, you have to know. You have to first tell me what the swamp is in order to argue specifically what those characteristics are to say that they're bad for Democrats and better for Trump. And I'm going to argue that Trump actually exemplifies those characteristics to the greatest extent possible. So, what do you consider the swamp?
Okay. I mean, I would say government agencies that are held unaccountable, generally bloated. They hold unaccounted for tax initiatives that don't necessarily reduce regulations, reform civil service, or like um, generally give funds and attention to very broad, vague, unexplored, unidentified policies and programs.
Okay, so the U.S. aid funding that you're particularly referencing, those are not vague, unidentified
I wouldn't
programs. Those are
say
just
that
things that they're.
necessarily it's U.S. aid.
Okay, so then what are you saying?
That I mean, there's a variety of different government allocations to these agencies, not just USAID.
Such as?
So this is where you and I have like a, a basic impasse at a debate level function is like I don't have the information that you're requesting. I've generally heard it and acquired it, and then like some of it's in one ear out the other. Like
Okay.
through time. At some
That's
point, I
understandable.
did know the exact agency that was paying what agency, but I mean, how can you expect me to retain all of that information instead of just the general idea of what's going on?
Well, like what vague, unidentified policies and programs? Because I could argue that's applicable to Doge.
Well, that was what Doge's objective was to do, was to find those vague, unaccounted for programs
I don't think they did
and
that
get rid
though.
of them.
I don't think they did that. Secondly, the Department of Defense. Like they have vast policies. Like Trump wants to do $1.5 trillion per year in spending on the Department of Defense. I think that's
Okay.
vague, unidentified, and not very clear policies. His tax
Well, I think some
initiatives
of
didn't
that
make things
is
better. He
unidentified
imposed
with a
tariffs
purpose.
that increased taxes on every single American. Did you know that according to a Federal Reserve report, we'd be below pre-pandemic levels of inflation if Donald Trump never imposed tariffs in the first place?
We would be below pre-pandemic levels of inflation
Yes.
if Trump never introduced tariffs.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. That's granted, but we would have significantly less net revenue as a country.
No,
So
we wouldn't
does
because they have to
inflation
pay
matter
back all
more
that
than the
revenue.
entire country's well-being? I don't know, man. You tell me.
Trump's overall bills have signed off on significantly more debt-related spending, over 4 trillion more in his first administration, and over 2 trillion since he's got in office.
Can you repeat that? I apologize.
Yeah, Trump did over 4 trillion more in terms of debt-related spending compared to the Democrats, and his first administration has done 2 trillion since he got in office as well. So 8 trillion
Yeah,
plus
okay.
two
So he's
trillion, that
spent
puts him
an
over 11
absolute ton of money.
or over 10.
I don't disagree with you that, yeah, he definitely has spent a lot of money, but he's more than made up for it in
No, no,
regard to the
this is
amount of money that,
debt-related spending. So like
yeah.
this isn't just the amount that he specifically just spent, and then he's making that up with revenue. No, this is
So you're
specifically the
saying
amount that
that we have
he spent
more money
minus revenue.
on top of the debt.
Yeah, this is how much he spent minus revenue.
Okay, so like if this was your gross versus net, essentially, like if
Yeah,
you're doing
based
your
on
own
what he
taxes.
signed into law. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you not think that the initiatives or programs that he's put into place will reduce essentially the net after X number of years?
Say that one more time.
Do you not think that the initiatives that he's put into place, i.e., the initial cost of what they take to do these things, will reduce the debt after whatever X amount of years that those are supposed to be in place
No,
for?
I'm looking at the overall 10-year effect from these policies. So
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So if you look at the overall 10-year effect of his presidency,
yeah,
I
it's
think
an
that, like,
increase. That's the
you
increase in
think
the
so.
deficit. Yeah, that's not what I just think. So it's what the
Interesting.
Committee for Responsible Federal Budget indicates, a bipartisan committee from the federal government.
So you're saying that he himself, as a president and through his presidency, is putting America and American citizens more in debt.
Yes, than the Democrats did,
Really?
by far, by almost double.
Okay. Okay. So then my question then would relate to you is, do you think that the American people have or had more of an ability to work and create an income for themselves previously under a Democratic president, or do you think that they've had more of an opportunity to create an income and pay off this debt under Trump's presidency?
I think under Biden's presidency at the very end was better because I think that GDP growth was better, real median wage growth was better. We could point to unemployment was better off. We had less inflation, and we were on track for that to go down, and interest rates would have come down more, so to make houses more affordable. So, yeah, we would have been way better off if Harris were in office.
Interesting. I would love to know your sources for that. And
The Bureau of
like
Labor
those are,
Statistics, the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, and the Bureau of Economic Analysis.
can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I want
I
to write
got
these
you.
down because I actually want to look into the things that you're saying
Hmm.
and look into them at a later date myself, not just like for this debate, but I want to just be generally educated on what you're talking about. Can you repeat those, please?
Yeah, look up Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's where you can find
Uh-huh.
the inflation, the unemployment, real median wage growth, real domestic manufacturing investment, all of those things that have been worse off since Trump got in office in
Okay.
terms of the level of growth. And then also for what's it called? For the Bureau of Economic Analysis, you can find similar data there. That's basically the same. And then for the debt, it's Committee for Responsible Federal Budget.
Wait, the Committee for Responsible Budget. I'm
For
relatively
Responsible Federal
familiar.
Budget. And then you just look
Responsible
up
Federal
Biden v.
Budget.
Trump and you'll see it. So
Okay.
Committee for Responsible Federal Budget, Biden v. Trump, and it'll come up first link.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And, again, I don't necessarily have all the sources or and I'm not going to sit here and quote Google AI like Dylan did, no offense, but like, God
Yeah,
bless
that
him.
was interesting, wasn't it?
No, I was that the guy's got a good heart. You got to give it to him. I just dislike his $100 thing. That was a dumb hill to die on.
Yeah, that
But
was a dumb hill to die on. Because, like, the thing is, he could have just clicked on the source link of it, and it could have shown him that he was wrong on that.
sure, I'm not really willing to make the concession to you that Trump is better or worse for these are your claims. I acknowledge that they are your claims, but I don't necessarily have the information in front of me to dispute them. And so, can we move on to a different subject
Absolutely.
of the positions I stated to you earlier as to why I support Trump?
Yeah, we can.
Cool.
So,
What would you prefer to talk about? Because I gave you 5 points.
yeah. So we already talked about fighting the deep state. We talked
Hmm.
about Doge and holding people accountable, the tax initiatives, vague unidentified policies. So we have a foreign policy, border security, immigration to go over. So
Sure. Why don't we talk about national security and foreign policy? That seems like a relatively hot topic right
I'm gonna
now.
hop off Parker though.
okay,
Thanks for having me on though.
appreciate you, Matt.
Take care, Matt.
Yeah. So go ahead.
You want me to give an opening statement on his national security and foreign policy? Why I support that?
Yeah, or I can tell you why I disagree with it.
Why don't you go ahead and tell me why you disagree with it?
Got you. I think that he's
Thank you.
destabilized relations that we've had with respected allies all around the world because of specifically him advocating to annex and invade and take over Greenland and Canada, which has destabilized relations with countries all around the world. The tariffs being imposed have destabilized relations with our countries, with countries that are allied with us all around the world. What's the evidence for this? Well, they're not helping us with Iran. MJ, thank you so much for the Galaxy. Thank you very much. Whereas under the Biden administration, they helped him with funding Ukraine, which is something he got the entirety of Europe to help defend. So we had significantly better allyships under Democratic administrations comparative to what we have now under Trump. He's made worse off conditions in terms of gas, right, and the economy because of the conditions in the war with Trump after claiming no new wars. So I think that he's done that while also meeting less objectives than what we've met under the JCPOA. So I think that we would have had better conditions if Democrats were in office for negotiations and for actually getting a deal done comparative to Trump being in office.
A deal for what?
A deal for limiting them from enriching uranium to the extent
In regard to
necessary to
Iran?
develop nuclear weapons. Yeah, Iran.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
It
So
was
then
at
specifically talking about
3.67%
Iran,
under
you don't
Obama.
necessarily. Oh, I'm sorry.
So I was just going to clarify. It was under 3.67% enriched uranium. Under the JCPOA, it's around 60% now.
And the JCPOA is what? Remind me.
The Obama agreement that he got with Iran to limit them from enriching uranium. We had unprecedented levels of surveillance over their nuclear enrichment facilities.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Thank you. I'm reminded of this. Okay. Is that all?
Yeah, those are all the basic points to start with.
Yeah, okay. So if I'm not wrong in just repeating your position back to you, generally you like what Biden had in regard to his foreign policy regarding Greenland, Canada. You don't like Trump's position regarding annexing and establishing a more militaristic control over Greenland and our relationship with Canada. You don't like the position that he's taken regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, and you don't like the fact that he has essentially eliminated our JCPOA agreement with Iran.
Yeah, those are just a few. I've countless more I can bring up, but I don't want to go too much into everything.
Okay, yeah. So usually, like regarding those three positions, I would say that I mean we've had a strong militaristic presence in Greenland for the past, I mean, almost 80 years, and it's always been a sect of national security interest for territorial reasons. And I
Agreed.
think that he's finally taken a strong position in the modern age, saying, "Hey, we actually need this for not only tactical reasons but strategic purposes as well." And it just makes sense for us to return to the original agreement that we had after World War II regarding Greenland and or during World War II. And that's actually a fairly democratic position for a Republican president to take, which is saying, hey, you know, if you guys want to give it to us, we're willing to make a deal. And if you're not, then, you know, no sweat. We still want to hold our military bases there. And I think that that's reasonable, right? But the way that he frames that in regard to his, you know, wording on Twitter or whatever is stupid, sure. But regarding what's actually been done, he hasn't done anything other than make a couple of memes. In respect to your Ukraine position, I also think that it's a bit wishy-washy. It's not necessarily the best, but I support his position of you know it never would have happened if he wasn't abstained from being a president through his projected second term, and now you know that's second term is 2020. Well, yeah, I mean we're in it, so that point. But then regarding Iran and the current conflict, which is actually a registered conflict, I would say that I fully support him allying with the Iranian citizenry in wanting to help them liberate themselves from the Iranian regime. I don't necessarily support a regime demanding such unlivable conditions from its people, let alone massacring its people. So I think that what he's been doing regarding bombing military installations and threatening to bomb a critical infrastructure has been an extremely effective tactic in getting them to like cede some of the things that they want to hold control over. And it's worked massively regarding sinking their navy and taking control over their airspace, that we are now able to have a more direct control and influence over the global economy and global market space by taking the cards that we were trying to give back to them, essentially by saying you can control the Strait of Hormuz. And then they instead turned around and started bombing civilian ships. And so we said, hey, no, don't do that. That's not okay. You can't just be a anyway. And so we stopped that, and now are the ones blockading and permitting particular boats in and out of that. So I mean, all in all, I support his position with Iran from an America First perspective. I think that we should always be thinking about that. And it seems to me like you even as a Democrat hold an America First perspective too, which is odd. But that's not a dig against you or the Democrats. It's just not modern function, or at least the rhetoric that's
Oh, it
perpetuated
totally
on the
is.
right
I mean,
hand
I
side.
think that we are actually America First, and I think that you guys portray yourself as America First, but seemingly don't actually uphold the values of America and
Mm.
what we should uphold.
Okay.
Are you
Yeah.
done
So
with
I mean,
explaining everything you wanted to explain, or should I
yeah. Let's
wait?
let's talk about the America First thing after this. But like,
Yeah, I want to respond to all of the things you brought up.
please go. Please do.
Yeah, so the Russia-Ukraine war definitely still would have happened if Trump were in office.
Okay.
I would like to hear your argument for why you think it wouldn't have happened. I do want to respond to the other points first before we do ask that question, though.
Okay.
I don't think that we're like liberating Iranians. Of course, I think the IRGC is oppressive, and I would hope that they aren't in power, of course. But I don't think that U.S. military intervention has historically led to better conditions within the Middle East in terms of quote unquote liberation. I don't
Mm.
think it's actually historically been for liberation. It's historically been for oil companies and for defense contractors, not really
Yeah, we
for,
can agree that it's not been for liberation purposes in the past. You and I can both agree on that.
yeah.
But
It also doesn't
that's
seem
not
to
what we're
be
there
for
for right
that
now.
now as well as like we're nowhere near closer to liberation. Along
Mm.
with the fact that it's not just the bombing of military installations; they're also bombing like civilian areas. And Trump's threatening to literally completely end civilization within Iran, threatening to bomb water desalination plants, threatening to bomb power plants, which is all civilian infrastructure, which accounts to a war crime. And then I could also just ask the question for what objectives do they meet because the airspace and navy control isn't really like one of the big issues that we had. Like they didn't really have much of a navy or air force or anything. So the main issue was ballistic missiles and nuclear threat is what
Hmm.
people were arguing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Can I debate that?
Yeah, but like maybe we want to focus on one of them, including the first. We could start with the Russia-Ukraine war wouldn't have happened under the Trump administration. I think it definitely would have. So, what
Yeah,
reason
you
do
and I
you
can
think that it
agree to
wouldn't have
disagree
happened?
on that. I don't know enough about the Ukraine position to really debate that. But let's debate the. So I'll just for brevity's sake, like I'll cede that point to you. You can take that as you want it. Um,
I mean, if
but
you actually think that, I do want to like look into that. I don't want to just like concede it for a debate. Like we are kind
I,
of trying to
I
go
just
through like
don't
what your
know enough
debates
about
are.
the Ukraine situation. To the best of like, I'll give you all of what I know. To the best of my knowledge, like the Ukraine had a pretty corrupt and dysfunctional government prior to Trump's first administration, and the conflict with Russia is like has been ongoing for nigh 60 years, and they took this Crimea and annexed a couple of other key pieces of land that they wanted and essentially had during the USSR, but so it just seems like old blood battle grudges from 100 years ago, and I don't know enough as to whether or not like Ukraine's been a upstanding, upholding country or whatever since then, and I don't necessarily know who I support regarding the Ukraine war, whether that's U.S. funding them, not funding them, whether that's the Ukrainians fighting for their independence. Because is it the Ukrainians doing that? I don't know. Is it the it just seems really convoluted. And so I don't know enough about the situation. I haven't done my research enough to
Wait,
really
but to
be able to
clarify, like
dissect
I
this.
want to clarify over the point that you made that like this wouldn't have happened if Trump were in office. What made you think that? I guess if you don't have any reason to think that,
Mostly just because he says that, and it seems like he had a pretty good relationship with Putin at the time.
but he didn't he
That
also say that he would end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours? How did that go?
Yeah, well, it obviously didn't happen.
Okay, so just because he says something isn't a good reason to believe that that's legitimately true here.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Okay, alrighty. I guess we can move on to a different one. Which one would you prefer to talk about based on ones I responded
I think
to?
Iran's a good piece for us to debate.
Okay, so how have we met any of the objectives in the Iran war?
Absolutely.
Like, what objectives have we met?
Well, we completely eradicated like almost 90% of their missile structure. We've completely eradicated almost like 20% of their missile launch, or sorry, not 20%, like 80% of their missile launch platforms. We've completely taken out of their Navy capabilities. We've completely taken out their airspace capabilities. And in regard to a tactical approach, a strategic approach, you want to first assess the most imminent threat, which is aerial borne, seaborne, anything that can be used to extend itself out to you before you start dealing with like the most like native born threats, and that's not to say that we should put boots on the ground. I don't support us putting boots on the ground, but regarding our objectives of just making sure that Iran can't strike more targets than it's currently capable of striking. I think we've done an amazing job of doing that. And then secondly, like the mere fact that they had 60% enriched uranium while under the JCPOA, and then now they don't have that is a pretty big deal.
That's
They
wrong.
don't have they don't have access to a nuclear capability right now. That's a huge deal. And they don't have access to ICBMs anymore, which they did 3 weeks ago.
So the 66 or 60% enriched uranium, that's not under the JCPOA. Under the JCPOA, it was below 3.7% because they had a cap that capped it out at 3.7. They actually had 3.67%.
And
So
they violated the JCPOA.
no, they
Exactly.
didn't. There's no evidence of that.
What do you mean
So
that
not
there's no
only is there no
evidence?
evidence of that, but I was also going to ask for your evidence of the 90% missile structures and 80% missile launch areas.
So again, I'm not gonna sit here and play source for source with you. Um,
Wait. I'm sorry. You can't make a claim like that and then just have me just accept it because you said it. Like, I'm sorry. I need it. Just gonna let you know, you're in front of 6,500 people here on TikTok and 3,400 people on YouTube. That's a lot of people.
oh,
That's nearly
nice.
10,000 people, and that's
Yeah.
a
Okay.
lot of people that are going to hear that information. So we probably
Yeah.
should have good reason to believe it. It's not just like we're on some phone call, like we're right now in front of nearly 10,000 people. What's up? You cut out?
Based on reports, and yeah, like I'm using Google at this point because this is something that was like loosely referred to in some YouTube videos that I'd
You're
seen
covering your microphone. It's
previously.
hard to hear you.
Oh, is this easier to hear me now?
Yeah, it's better to hear you.
Okay, cool. So previously, like I had gotten my information from, a variety of different news sources and like YouTube videos that is just generally alluded to like me having this knowledge in my brain. I don't necessarily have like all of the sources written down in like a categorical like spreadsheet that I can cite very easily, but I appreciate the need for having like a swiftness with things, but that's as a regular Joe, as just like some dude, that's not usually how I operate. So I just kind of generally understand things. It's just like the same as any one of your 6,500 viewers or 3,500 viewers that you're talking to. I'm just a regular guy. But from what I was able to look up on Google, there's over 100 sources quoting this 90% reduction in Iran's active missile launch
Yeah. Yeah.
capability.
What's the title of any of them,
So
just so
we've
I can
got
look them up?
Reuters, we've got Times of Israel, we've
Yeah.
got
What's
Facebook,
Reuters?
Wikipedia, the Washington
What's
Post,
the title of
NETV.
Reuters? I'll just look that one up.
Let's go to Reuters. The U.S. can only confirm about a third of Iran's missile arsenal, sources say. And this was published March last month. And apparently, I'm not subscribed to Reuters, so I apologize for not being able to continue the article here. But
Oh,
I
I
can
mean,
only read their
I'm not
headline.
either, and I can still see it. But uh,
Yeah, right.
U.S. can only confirm about a third of Iran's missile arsenal destroyed. Sources say.
Oh, okay. But drone attacks were down by 90%, apparently, as according
Pentagon
to.
officials said Iranian drone attacks were down by 90% since the start of the war.
Oh,
Um,
that's good. That
okay,
seems like a
well that
generally good thing.
um, I mean that was about March 27th. That was about a month ago. That's different than what it would be now. Also, like I think that they're just claiming, just in general, like what they're doing, not actually like providing a source.
Well, so Pete
But
Hegseth,
also,
and let's pull up the New York Post because I just looked at a piece from New York Post. It was a video of Pete Hegseth talking about Iran's missiles are down 90%. And let's just pull up the same video.
but like again, one of the sources again confirmed only a third of the arsenal has been destroyed.
Well, that was Reuters specifically a
Yeah,
month ago.
Reuters is a great source.
Okay, sure. But we have over 100 sources talking about a 90% figure.
Okay, I mean, what other ones? I'll take a look.
Well, like I said, there's the New York Post and Pete Hegseth giving a press release conference, and his statement, his words specifically,
Okay, so
Iran's
what's
missiles are down
the title
90%.
of the New York Post article? That is a right wing source, but
Iran's missiles down 90%.
alrighty. Is it missile usage? That's because we're kind of in like they had like a ceasefire.
Give me just a second here, dude. I want to
Wait,
find
no,
the
this isn't
exact
even
same
from
thing
that.
that you're
This is
looking at.
literally in March.
Yeah.
Their missile capabilities are not down 90%. They just said their missile volume is down 90%. And this was literally March 13th. So this was a month and a half ago. So this is like quite literally within the first few weeks of the war.
Yeah, okay, so
I
missiles
don't
down
buy that.
90%, drone
I think
attacks
that's actually
95%.
bullshit. And also, by the way, that's what the Reuters article came out and said, that they can only account for actually one third.
But this article literally says their missile volume is down 90%.
Yeah, that's from original strikes. That's what the New York Post article says. That's all it says is Pete Hegseth said this.
I mean, that's a fairly trustworthy source.
I don't know if I agree with you on that one.
He's our Secretary of War. What, do you not think that he's credible?
No, I don't actually. I don't think the Secretary of Defense is credible. But I
Why do
mean,
you call him the Secretary of Defense?
because that's what it is.
Well, no, his title has been changed.
Yeah, but I don't care.
Like, if you know, a different political party like changed the title of a position, like I would still address them as the new title.
I mean, he's the Secretary of Defense.
Like we had, you know, DEI initiatives, and we had to address people then. Why can't you
I
do
still
it for
use
the
the Department
Secretary
of Defense.
War?
I'm not going to say the Department of War.
Okay. Well,
Unless you
whatever.
want
We
us to
can
say
agree to
Department of
disagree on
War
that.
crimes.
I mean, look, man, I'm really not trying to slander things with you. Like, I think that you're getting into the weeds regarding whether or not this particular source is valid or whether or not that particular source is valid. We have from literally Pete Hegseth saying, you know, missile volumes down 90%. And that adhered to my initial figure that I quoted you from the
You said
beginning. And
missile
so if you
structure
want to
was down
disagree
90%.
or
But
disavow the source, okay, that's fine.
yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
but let's
you
move
know
on
what?
to the next
Let's
point.
operate as if that's true. Okay? Um,
Cool.
this isn't the main objectives that we had. The main objectives that we had was
Was to
that
change each other's mind.
no, was that their ballistic missile capabilities, because their argument was they're going to be able to maintain their nuclear development, right, if they have the ballistic missile capabilities.
Yeah, missile volume and missile capabilities and enriched uranium all serve a tactical and strategic purpose.
Yeah, but you understand that they're different things. Just because they're shooting a
Of
different level
course.
of missiles doesn't mean that they don't have the capabilities of having ballistic missiles, which is the thing that they wanted to limit them from having, is the capability to have ballistic
Yeah.
missiles.
Yeah. So if you wanted to have the capability of, you know, launching a missile, you could have a nuclear missile, but if you didn't have a means of defending it or a means of launching it, then it would mean nothing.
Yeah, but like that's
And
a short-term thing. It's not long-term. They can just build that back.
yeah, but they also can't really build back enriched uranium,
That's that's different though. Enriched uranium is
which is
different than
one of the reasons
the
why we
missile
struck one of
launch areas and structures.
their uranium enriching sites.
Yeah, but you understand that they wouldn't have enriched uranium to that degree if we never pulled out of the JCPOA originally.
We didn't. We pulled out of the JCOA, if, to the best of my knowledge, and I could very well be wrong on this, because they were enriching the uranium anyways,
Wrong. It
and
was
they came out and told us this.
no. It's not because of that. It's because Trump didn't like the fact that they were able to build up money that he says that they were using to fund terror operations around the world, because we got rid of the sanctions on them. But the agreement that Trump
Okay,
was
so
willing to
they
agree
were
to in
funding
terms of the
Hezbollah and the
ceasefire.
Houthis
Yeah, but the
and
agreement that
them
Trump was
people in the South Africa.
but the agreement that Trump was willing to accept in terms of the 10-point plan here recently included that we would give up all the sanctions on Iran. So it's like we're giving up
Well, he
all of
never
these things
agreed to
without
that.
getting rid of their enriched uranium. Well, he did
Where
actually.
do
He
you see
said
that he agreed to this?
that was after him. Remember, he said he was going to end civilization for Iran.
No, he never said he was going to end civilization for Iran. He said
Yes, he did.
either a
He
civilization
said
will
a
be ended
civilization will
tonight.
die tonight.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's not him saying he's going to end a civilization.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
That's him just being. That's just him being a goofy goober on Twitter,
It's
man.
him
Like,
threatening to end an entire civilization. I don't know how you just write that off as saying he's a goofy goober. This isn't SpongeBob.
it's Trump speak, man. Like, you got to
Yeah,
recognize that some
and
things that he
so then you're
says
saying,
are
so then what you're
are
saying is that it's not effective for him
full
to
of it.
even say that in the first place because no one will even take it seriously.
Well, I mean, it seems like Iran took it pretty seriously.
Okay, well, it doesn't, because we don't even actually have an agreement with them. We didn't get any of our objectives met, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, but we have the Strait of Hormuz,
He
and they
did
don't have a
engage in the
military to
threat
back it
though,
up.
and like the fact that you try to move the goalposts and act like that's not a big deal,
It's
that he
not. It's
literally
not me moving
threatened
the
to end an
goalpost. I'm
entire
staying remained on
civilization
my
of people.
position.
Like, dude, that threat is cartoonishly evil, my guy. You don't
It's
just
not
threaten to
cartoonishly
end
evil.
civilization, okay? You don't just do that. He's president of the United States. He's not a goofy goober. He's not SpongeBob or Patrick. This isn't a TV show. This is the literal world stage. This is an
Oh,
entire
you're
civilization
blowing
of
this way
people,
out of proportion.
92
Then
million people.
you're blowing it way out of proportion when
I'm not. No, I'm not.
regarding his
You're blowing
specific
it way
tweet.
under
Like, no,
proportion.
no. So okay, yeah, I don't disregard the fact that you shouldn't be um, so casual with your tweets as a president. You and I can both agree in the fact that he probably should take his tweets and his statements a little bit or a lot of bit more seriously. You and I see eye to eye in that. That's fine. It's not just him being a goofy goober. Of course, I concede that to you. But my point is that the way that he talks serves a purpose of him saying either a civilization's going to end tonight or Iran's going to agree to things, puts pressure on them with the sole intention and purpose of them paying attention to the 10-point bill and him getting hostages out of territory that they're currently under. When he released that statement, we were also doing a mission to save two pilots. So it's like, okay, well, it might be important for us to put pressure on them politically as a means of like virtual distraction. We operate in a world where like there's not just like air and land and sea anymore. There's the digital space too. There's the people's voice space too. So all of these things matter.
If you're saying it's a distraction, well then what you're not understanding is that it's still not something that allowed for us to meet any of these objectives. So again, the whole
Well, you
threat
asked
of
me what
literally
the
wanting to
objectives
take
were,
out
and I told you what
the
they
whole
were.
threat of wanting to take out an entire civilization is not something that you should ever threaten from the position of presidency. It is ridiculous that we even have to argue that you shouldn't do this. You can distract people without specifically utilizing the threats against the literal murder of an entire civilian population.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. But he did it, and you and I both disagree with the fact that he said it. Okay, that sucks. He did it. Yeah. Like, what do you want me to say? You and I both disagree with the fact that he said that.
What I want you to say, I want you to say like these are things are not presidential. What do I want
Yeah.
you to say? I
Yeah,
want you to
that was not
acknowledge
presidential for him to do that. I don't disagree with you
what I
on
want
that.
you to acknowledge is the level of issue that this is. It's not just something to look past and be like, oh, I still support him no matter what. It's something to look at and be like, yeah, maybe I
I've
shouldn't
never
have supported
supported
this
any
guy in the first
president no
place.
matter what.
Maybe I
Trump is
shouldn't have
literally the
voted for
only
him.
president I've ever voted for.
But my argument's that you made the wrong decision, that you shouldn't have voted for him.
Yeah, I'd still like to be convinced why.
Yeah, I gave countless examples. I can give countless more. You're right. He's made the conditions worse off in terms of foreign policy, destroyed our relationships with countries all around the world. He's pardoned
You and I
violent
have
rioters who
disagreed
beat
about
police
foreign
officers and
policy.
called them
We've
patriots. He
disagreed about
incited a violent
economic
insurrection at the
stability.
Capitol. He's made the economy worse off in every single metric since he's got in office. Right? He's been held
Mm,
civilly liable of sexually abusing women. He bragged about walking into the changing rooms of naked women while they're
okay,
changing
let's
without
talk about
consent.
that for a second. Let's talk about the civil abuse and abuse of women
Okay.
that you pose he does, because this is essentially a character argument, and this is what like needless to say, the left is very good at doing is painting Republicans and right wing people under character arguments, but without talking about things from a moral position. Has he been convicted of any abuses whatsoever at all, period?
He was held liable unanimously amongst a jury of 9 people for forcefully penetrating
That's
aging
not
Carol's
being
vagina
convicted.
against her will.
That's not being convicted.
So, has he been convicted in a criminal court? No. The reason why he wasn't convicted in a criminal court is because of statute of limitations, which prevents people who have been from holding their abusers accountable
I
in
know
the
what the
context of a
statute of
criminal court,
limitations is,
regardless
man.
of the amount of evidence provided.
Yeah, I do know what a statute of limitations is, but your point is that he's been held liable, he's been accused, he's been alleged that he's a sexual offender, and he's never been convicted of it, not once. And the people that could convict him or have a case compelling enough to convict him of such a thing have all come out and said that he never did it.
That's so dishonest. There's been 27
It's
plus
not
people.
dishonest. That's the facts.
There's been 27 plus women that have accused him of misconduct. He's been held liable for abuse in a
Accused.
civil court, unanimous decision of 9 people in a jury. It's not just an accusation, by the way. And also, you think every single one of the 27 women are lying. That's what you have to think.
It's not necessarily that I think they're all lying. It's
You
just
do.
that
If you don't think that they're
whether
all
it's an
lying, then you think that he's
allegation or an
guilty.
indictment, The evidence hasn't been presented enough to the degree where a jury has convicted him
Wrong. A
of
jury did
actually
hold him
being a
liable.
sexual offender.
Wait, why are you just ignoring that a jury held him liable of forcefully penetrating E. Jean Carroll's vagina against her will?
Because that jury was under a civil case.
So you still accept the determinations from civil cases, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
But
if you accept the determinations from civil cases, why are you dismissing this?
because it got pushed through to a larger case, and the evidence was unsubstantial to proving whether or not he
It
was
was.
able to be
It
convicted
proved it
of
in a
a
civil
sexual
court so that he was
allegation.
held legally responsible of it by a jury. An entire jury
To
determined that
then
it was
be
enough.
preceded by further investigation of the alleged evidence,
No, he
which was
was held
all proved
liable.
wrong.
It was not proven wrong. What piece of evidence in the case you dispute?
No, that's not the position that this needs to be under. Like,
I
you're
want an
saying
answer
that
to that
there's
question.
evidence. You're
What
saying that
piece of
there's
evidence in the
evidence.
case you dispute?
The evidence that his lawyers presented was sufficient to prove that he was not um, a sexual offender. I know the
Wrong.
result of the
He was
case.
liable of sexual abuse. Why are you
He
lying?
was liable of it, sure, but he wasn't ever convicted of anything.
Oh my God. We've already responded to this multiple times. A jury determined that he did this in a civil court. Just because he wasn't convicted in a criminal court doesn't mean that this isn't applicable. You already said you accept the determinations from civil courts. If you accept the determinations from civil courts, then you accept the determination in a civil court against Donald Trump.
Well, okay, I might accept a determination, but I don't necessarily agree that the determination is uh, superseding the determinations held by other courts or by courts that are more in line regarding the specific allegation. This is why each allegation, each indictment has a particular court case that it goes under scrutiny for.
I don't know what courts you're referencing. We're talking about in a civil court. What other courts are you referencing?
Well, yeah, i.e., in a civil court or in a criminal court or in a criminal case, each case has its own case that gets investigated or arbitrated, like
Yeah, what the are you saying? Okay,
arbitrated. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah, I don't know what the hell you're even talking about. This is irrelevant to the point. He was held liable in a civil court. The civil court determined this. There's no extra court to go to. They appealed it in the civil court. They lost. Trump lost. E. Jean Carroll won the case. E. Jean Carroll proved that Donald Trump abused her. Okay?
Wait. What? What are you talking about?
Yeah, if you look at the case, E. Jean Carroll proved that Donald Trump abused her in the civil case and
Hang
then
on,
also
this is
won
new
the appeal.
information to me. So I'm just trying to be good faith and good, like, honestly, trying to hear you out.
Have you looked into this case?
So yeah, are you talking about the? Is this the girl with the dress from like 30 years ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Why are you laughing?
Okay, so if I remember correctly, the test reportedly found traces of unidentified male DNA.
Yes, and Trump had multiple years to give up his DNA, and he chose not to within the time slot allotted, which is exactly what we'd expect from someone who's guilty. What we'd expect from someone who's innocent is that they would give up their DNA to prove that they weren't at the scene of the crime because Trump claimed he never met her in the very first place. And then if he never met her, he couldn't have been within close proximity enough to her for a long enough time to even show up on her dress in the first place.
No. So that's the thing is that her claim was that at the time that she was by him, that she saved the dress because, again, and a lot of these details are fuzzy because it's been so long. It's been like 2 years since this was in the news. So I apologize if this is off the top of my head, but if I remember correctly, it was like she saved the dress for 27 years, and then they supposedly pulled a sample off of her dress that they were trying to compare to his DNA. And his lawyers were like, that's not even necessary because the match from that wouldn't even be liable. And so it never actually even went into.
That's not what his lawyer said. So, again, in this context, they chose to not give up the DNA because Trump refused to give up his DNA.
Yeah, because there was
they
no
asked
good
him
cause.
for
There's
consent to
no
give up
like
his DNA.
persuasive justification to give up.
Why wouldn't he
his
do that? Wait,
DNA.
why wouldn't he do that?
Why would you incriminate yourself in a court of law?
Exactly. Why would you incriminate yourself? Boom. You got it.
You don't need
right
to.
on the money. Right on the money. Why would you incriminate yourself?
So this
in
is
order
like
to be
saying,
able
like,
to incriminate yourself, you have to have done something incriminating.
Okay, I respect that. So hang on for a second. In order to litigate whether or not somebody has or hasn't done something, right, you also have the right to remain silent. right? And so that's essentially what he's saying is why would you, when I say incriminate yourself, I'm referencing you have the right to remain silent, whether or not he's incriminating himself or actually did the criminal act.
Yeah, but we know in plenty of instances in which
So
people
I'm not
utilize the Fifth
necessarily
Amendment
saying
that
that,
we know what it's going to mean if they use the Fifth Amendment.
dude, this is not a gotcha, man. If it's actually
It is.
genuinely trying to influence me and pull me over to your side, using this as a gotcha is just going to push me farther away from you.
Well, if facts and
Like, do you
evidence and
understand that?
logic, if facts, evidence, and logic push you away, that's your fault,
No,
not
it's
mine.
it's not that facts, evidence, and logic push me away from you. It's that the facts and logic proved that his team didn't need to provide the sample for the purpose of it. It was like, in order to pursue the full report aggressively, they would have needed to do that 27 years ago.
So then here's my question. If he wasn't at the scene of the crime, if you know that as a lawyer,
Uh-huh.
why wouldn't you give up the DNA?
Because even if it was tested, the evidence would be considered inconclusive.
Wait, no, 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 it wouldn't. It would conclude that he wasn't at the scene of the crime.
No, it doesn't need to be. And also, this is
And
this is
wouldn't that serve as
like, if I
evidence that
remember
you guys
correctly,
could have used in the case to
like the
show that there
forensic
was more
analysis
doubt?
of this dress also concluded that no sperm was found in the first place.
Yeah, it was unidentified male DNA. This proves that he was within close proximity with her because not everyone that she was around showed up
No,
on
it
that
just
dress.
proves that
Only her close.
somebody who was a man was in close proximity of her 27
Yes,
years ago.
yes,
So
and
she had a
and
dress that some man touched 27 years ago, and she's claiming that it was Trump's, and
yeah.
like
So
it
then,
could
if
have
she's
literally
claiming
been
it's Trump,
anybody.
if she's claiming it's Trump's, why doesn't Trump give up his DNA to prove that it's not his? If it is not
Why
his,
does
why
he
doesn't he give up
need
his DNA?
to? Dude,
Because
that'd be
it's
like going to a Starbucks and the cashier touches your shirt and you save that shirt for 30 years until the cashier gets famous, and then for some reason the cashier is famous and you're like, all right, I want to sue you because you touched me, and so I'm going to allege that you know me. And does the cashier have to prove that? No, they don't have to prove that at all, because without good cause or persuasive justification for the result of the test to be enforced, there's zero reason for that to be a necessary protocol for you to go through, i.e., the evidence might be inconclusive.
Brian. Can I give you a better analogy? Let's say that you're driving on the road, completely sober. Cop pulls you over, thinks you're drunk. How's he do a test where you do all like the little things to prove that you're not drunk, and
Sobriety test.
you fail it? Yeah, the sobriety test. You fail it, and they think you're drunk. They're going to charge you, right, and give you this payment you have to pay. You have to go to all these courses, right, and it's going to harm your reputation. You might lose your job because of it, right? If you do go through with it, right? Like if you don't go through with the breathalyzer, but you have the chance to do a breathalyzer to prove your innocence, to prove that you're totally sober. Do you do the
Mhm.
breathalyzer or do you take the charge if you are innocent?
Well, that's a quite poignant analogy. I mean, I think that if you could just avoid the altercation altogether, then I don't think that taking a breathalyzer or doing the sobriety test would be necessary. So you're saying that if he was forced to submit DNA or what?
I'm giving you a certain scenario where like you already have driven. You're already sober. In this scenario, what will you do? Will you take the breathalyzer because you know you're sober and you'll pass it? Or will you take the charge
Yeah,
just
that's
because you're
not
a
a good
hard-headed
analogy,
idiot?
man. That's not a good analogy for the scenario that
It's a
this
perfect
is. It's
analogy.
not applicable. No, it's not.
Can you respond to the question?
Oh, well, yeah, obviously you'd take the breathalyzer and
Obviously.
prove that, yeah.
So if Trump
So
knows that
obviously
he's
you
going to
take the
be held
breathalyzer.
liable if he doesn't give up his DNA, and he can prove that he wasn't the scene of the crime by giving up his DNA,
Hmm.
he would give
Sure.
up his DNA if he was innocent. The reason why he didn't give up his DNA is because he thinks it will incriminate him and show that he was the scene of the crime, and that his whole story that they quote unquote never
Well,
met,
those are a
and that
lot
he
of
wasn't within close
assumptions.
proximity to her is totally bullshit.
Those are a lot of assumptions that you're making. And that was not the result of the case. The result of the case was that he did not need to provide that evidence, as her claim was unsubstantial, and that the evidence that would or could be provided would be inconclusive in the first place. A match or a non-match wouldn't definitively prove or disprove the allegations at hand. It might only suggest contact, if anything useful. And that's exactly what the judge noted, if I remember correctly, that the alleged assault could have occurred without sufficient quantity or quality of Trump's, you know,
Yes, but it
DNA.
serves as evidence against the fact that he was there, right? That you could use from the Trump administration side, right, to show like,
So
oh,
it
I'm
wouldn't have mattered
innocent
either way,
because
is what the judge
Trump
says.
Trump could claim, oh, I'm innocent. I proved that my DNA was not on that dress after she claimed that my DNA
There
was
wasn't
on that dress. So
there
right
wasn't
there,
enough
can you just be
of
quiet and listen for a second, please? Okay? So
gladly.
yeah, so in that scenario, I think that would have clearly demonstrated that he wasn't at the scene of the crime. You would say, oh, okay, well, I think it wouldn't have proved everything that we would have wanted it to. Sure. What you're not understanding though, is it gives you more evidence and more doubt in the case, which obviously would have been relevant to the jury's determination on the matter. So why would you leave something like that out if you know that you're innocent in the scenario? Because then you put yourself at risk of losing tens of millions of dollars and it negatively impacting your reputation running into the election.
Yeah, I'll give you two reasons. One, it's a character argument that you're discussing whether or not, the morally right choice was what he made, okay, versus this is the second argument. It takes money, time, effort, resources, lawyers, all of that to provide, present, produce the evidence and the write-ups and the discussions and the time and the courts to go through the process of presenting that. When the judge himself says it wouldn't have even mattered anyways, he's just going to listen to the judge and say, okay, cool. It doesn't matter. So that's where we're going to stand.
So is this a response to what I said or no?
That was the response. Yes. The first aspect of what you discussed was a character argument, and that's nullified by the results of the court case.
Now, the court case determined that Trump abused Eugene Carroll.
He didn't verify or clarify if anything it absolved him
What
of
did
it.
the judge say? The judge said that Donald Trump, in fact, raped Eugene Carroll. You cited what the judge said there as evidence
What?
or reason to believe something.
No.
The judge did say that Donald Trump,
No.
in fact, raped Eugene Carroll.
Which judge
The judge that oversaw the case.
oversaw which case?
The Eugene Carroll case. This is in the appeal.
So you're saying that the judge who regarded the alleged assault as could have occurred with sufficient quantity or quality to have remained on the dress claims that Donald Trump raped Eugene Carroll.
Yeah, Judge Kaplan said that Eugene Carroll was raped by Donald Trump, right? The dress
Hang
and
on.
happened to not be a part of that determination because Trump didn't give up his DNA. But I say it to be even more evidence to prove on top of the determination that the court made that this is also evidence that he was
You know
likely
the name of the
guilty.
judge? I'm trying to look up their specific statement.
Yeah, look up judge says Eugene Carroll was raped.
Yeah, I'm typing that in, and it's just giving me a bunch of stuff. So I'm trying to find out the specific name of the
You can
judge.
find it from Washington Post. Judge clarifies, yes, Trump was found to have raped Eugene Carroll.
This is Aaron Blake saying this was a rape claim. This was a rape case all along, and the jury rejected. Or sorry, Grape. Excuse me. Sorry. Made other findings. His lawyer Joe Copina said outside the courthouse. The judge has now clarified that this is basically a legal distinction without a real world difference. He says that what the jury found Trump did was in fact rape as commonly understood. The filing from Judge Lewis Kaplan came as Trump's attorneys have sought a new trial and have argued that the jury's $5 million verdict against Trump in the civil suit was excessive. The reason they argue is that sexual abuse could be as limited as the groping of a victim's. Kaplan roundedly rejected Trump's motion Tuesday, calling that argument entirely unpersuasive. The finding that Ms. Carroll failed to prove that she was raped within the meaning of the New York Penal Law Code does not mean that she failed to prove that Mr. Trump raped her, as many people commonly understand the word rape, Kaplan wrote. He added, indeed, as the evidence at trial recounted below makes clear, the jury found that Mr. Trump, in fact, did exactly that. Referring to his previous statement of she failed to prove that Mr. Trump raped her.
That's not what that said. You added
Okay,
that.
he added is in reference to his previous statement. So, okay, Kaplan said that New York's legal definition of rape is far narrower than the word is understood in common modern
Yeah,
parlance.
so he's saying it's commonly understood to be rape, and that the legal definition didn't determine it to be rape because the legal definition is not grasping how
Okay,
we colloquially understand the term. Which now,
sure.
by the way, the definition of rape under New York penal law has changed.
Yeah, it includes groping of the breasts.
No, this is forceful penetration of a woman's against her will. This is not groping.
Trump was not
They're
accused, so
claiming
the alleged
abuse. Dude,
offense.
your reading comprehension is dog shit. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
That is
okay,
really bad.
man.
I mean, I'm trying not to be rude there, but holy shit, dude. They were saying that the sexual abuse can include groping, right? But rape doesn't. But he was saying that this is a colloquial understanding of rape because forceful penetration of her against her will is rape as colloquially understood. But the definition of sexual abuse under New York penal law does apply to things like groping and to things like forceful penetration of a woman's against her will. And that's
Trump
why
was
they
not
had to
accused of
change the
that.
definition under the context of New York penal law.
So, in this article, it further states that Trump was not accused of that. So, the only alleged offense that would have qualified as sexual abuse was forced digital penetration.
Yeah, which means without a male member.
So, okay. So then,
Is
if
that
I
not rape?
continue reading, it says,
Is that not
hang
rape?
on. If I continue reading, it says the jury's finding of sexual abuse therefore necessarily implies that it found that Mr. Trump forcibly penetrated her. Kaplan wrote, calling it the only remaining conclusion. Interesting. Yeah, I did not know this, and I'm willing to cede this point to you. Yeah, I think that's gross and disgusting, and that anybody who raped a woman should be held accountable for it. I think that if this is actually the case, if this is what the evidence provides, and this is what the scenario presents, then like he should be like tried and persecuted as according to the law.
So
So
would you say
I
that you don't
mean,
support him anymore for president? Like you wouldn't have
well,
voted
no,
for
of
him
course I
if you had
support
this
his
information?
presidency. I don't support the fact that he raped somebody.
Okay, but
Absolutely
like you'd
not.
still be willing to vote for him over Harris.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even though you think he's raped a woman, you'd still vote for him over Harris.
I mean, that does put a thumb in things for sure. Um, Granted, I don't like that Harris has been doing a lot worse stuff. It's like in today's political climate, we're talking about like one evil person or another evil person, and so it's like I don't necessarily have a good
Yeah,
character
what has Harris
analysis
done
of
that's
Harris either.
what has Harris done that's comparable to rape?
I don't want to talk about Harris, man. We're good.
No, seriously, what has Harris done that's
No,
comparable to rape?
I'm not going to make claims that are unfounded and that I don't have enough information to present.
Okay, so then why did you
Especially not
make
under
that
law.
original claim then? Right? So then the point that I'm making then is that if you can't determine that she's done anything that you could even compare to rape, then how could you say that you'd still vote for him over her? So literally so blatantly.
Well, it's the difference of like I'm a regular Joe. You clearly have the
You don't
information
need
in
to
front of
be a
you, and
professional debater to be able to understand this point. This is a point any basic person could understand.
no, but you're used to this atmosphere of having 10,000 people watching you all the time, and I'm not, and I'm just not prepared to make a statement about something and have to argue it without, you know, looking it up and understanding it to its fullest extent.
Then
To
why
the
did you
point of
originally
being
argue
able
it in
to
the first
debate
place?
it.
That's what I'm not understanding is why did you originally make the point in the first place then?
The point of what?
The point where you said that she's done horrible bad things that are comparable to what Donald Trump's done, and
Because
that's why you
that's to the
specifically
best
are
of
going
my
to still vote for
understanding.
Donald Trump even though you believe he's a rapist.
Yeah, it's to the best of my understanding, and I don't necessarily have to vocalize that on a live with 10,000 people, bro.
Yeah, but you have to have a really good reason to say that you're going to vote for the rapist over Kamala Harris. Because right now it seems obscene and
That's
insane to
fair.
vote for someone who's a rapist who you believe to be a rapist based upon things that you can't even tell me on the
Well,
stream.
it's also the Washington Post, like, and I don't necessarily know if this is fully founded. I want to do
Oh
more
my God!
research
Wait, you
into
can
this.
click on other articles. They all report on this. It's not just the
Sure.
Washington Post.
Yeah, sure.
That's
I
what the
need to do
judge
more
said,
research on this.
though. Wait,
We
that's not
spent
what
like
just Washington. The
45
Washington
minutes
Post
talking
reported
about
on
the
that.
E. Jean Carroll case, and
You wanted to talk about it.
convinced me about it, but it's not enough to sway me on whether or not he's a good president.
Yeah, like
Like,
that's insane to me. Like you'd still think that a rapist is a good president. Like that's absurd. That's obscene. That's a. You believe he's a rapist? I think if someone is
I
determined to
think
be a
for a
it should
second,
be
dude,
illegal
that
for them to run
Hillary
for
Clinton
president. If
was
someone's
in
held
the
civilly
running to be a
liable,
president.
if someone's held civilly liable of abusing someone or criminally convicted of abusing someone, it should be illegal for them to run for president of the United States. Why can't you say the same thing?
Held civilly liable or proven guilty in a court of law. I don't know. He was never proven guilty for this crime. He just had some judges say some
He was
things
held
about
liable,
him.
and a judge did say that he abused E. Jean Carroll.
Yeah, a judge said those things. I don't know if those allegations are considered true and founded.
They are. That's what the case
Okay,
determined.
okay, cool. Like, I don't know if that's true, man. I really don't. I'm
If
willing
you
to
want to
take
go
your
do
word
more
for it
research
for
into the
the
case,
sake
you
of this
can. But I'm right.
conversation, but like, I do need to go do more research and understand this more thoroughly. And I think that's the best place that we can leave this topic of conversation. If you want to talk about other topics, then sure. But I mean, I, I, I definitely don't want to talk about Harris.
Okay. Well then,
I,
alrighty. Well then, if you have any, I think you. No, I'm just gonna say this. You should go look into that. And let me know if you change your mind on that. But yeah, I think I'm done with our conversation for today.
yeah, Parker, thank you. You've been wonderful. You've been delightful to debate with, and I've really appreciated your time and your discussion. I think you've been nothing but professional and a fantastic intellectual person. So thank you for challenging me. I'm glad that I was able to cede some points to you and understand some things. I'm glad that you were able to listen to my positions, and I hope that you were able to get some perspective from what other people are thinking.
For sure. Well, I appreciate you coming up.
Take care, man.
Alrighty.
Bye bye.
Let's go on to the next individual. If you're on YouTube.